Hey there guys, we're taking a look at Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 running on the AMD Ryzen 550-500U. Now this is the original version of the game. We're taking a look at the campaign running on it before we take a look at the remastered versions of both Modern Warfare and Modern Warfare 2. Now the game is currently running with all of the highest in-game graphics settings except for the AA, which I just completely turned off. That's normally how I play almost every game. I just don't find AA to be necessary, especially on laptop screens, but that could just be up to your personal preference. You can of course set it to 2x, but just know you are going to take a performance hit compared to what is on the screen right now. The performance that you're seeing right now is pretty solid, getting averages that are more than above 60 FPS, where we're pretty much at 100 FPS, and we have 1% lows that are close enough to 60 to just let you know that this is going to be an extremely smooth experience. And we're running at the stock 15-watt TDP. Now that's not going to be the case all of the time. Depending on the missions that you're doing, the graphics performance is going to drop, though it's usually in the more scripted sections, and in those situations the performance drop is really just not going to be that noticeable. In terms of actual gameplay, everything seems to be perfectly fine. As you can see in this mission right here, this section right here, our 1% lows are dropped down all the way down to 30, but while we're actually doing gameplay sections, everything is perfectly fine. You'll see that the moments where things will drop are just when segmented or scripted segments like this occur. Outside of that, gameplay is very smooth and consistent. With that said, the 25-watt TDP does overall improve the experience, though not significantly, because we're not really reaching much higher in terms of our averages. It's mostly an improvement in general of the 1% lows. That just means that it's going to be above 60 or at least slightly below it most of the time, but almost the entire time that you're playing, it's going to be at a reasonable level. Overall, it does smooth things out, but it is not as big of a jump as we've seen with other games where we'll see 1% lows actually get a noticeable uplift. So the 25-watt TDP really is not doing too much here. Really, I would say that you're not too bad by going with the 25-watt TDP, but the uplift might not be big enough to really justify it for you. It doesn't really seem to have raised the temperatures by a significant margin, but it is a raise in temperature, and if you're not going to get a super noticeable performance uplift, then it might not be worth it to go ahead and do it. Really, in general, it also does suffer from similar problems to the 15-watt TDP, where we would have certain issues with the 1% lows dropping in the more cinematic sections, but in general it's not anything too severe. And again, in those sections the performance drop is a lot less important. We run into a similar problem with the 30-watt TDP, where it doesn't really do anything notable in terms of an uplift. Our averages are staying pretty much the same, and our 1% lows are hovering around the same, around 60 FPS range. So these increases in TDP really are not doing anything to improve the overall performance here. All it really ends up doing in general is it prevents certain drops in performance that might end up happening, but they are still going to happen. But like I mentioned, it is in sections where a performance drop is not going to be that detrimental, though it admittedly at the lower settings it does drop the FPS low enough that you might notice stutter, while these higher TDPs are less likely to do that, though it might still happen. Really, I'm just very curious to see how the remasters are actually going to end up performing compared to these. I was hoping to see better performance than this in all honesty, but in general it's not going to be a bad experience. I was just hoping that we would be able to get some better high refresh rate numbers, but in general it seems like that's going to be out of the question unless we want to start turning down the graphics settings, and I think it's perfectly fine at the level that it is, especially since we are playing it on a laptop with just a 60 Hz display anyway. Of course, if you do hook this up to an external monitor, you can actually do some high refresh rate gaming, since I mean we're not able to hit a full 144 Hz refresh rate, but it's not necessarily going to be necessary. We would probably be You're going to get pretty much most of the benefit of high refresh rate gaming by hitting these refresh rates anyway. It is a experience of diminishing returns. Like the difference between 120 Hz and 144 Hz is a lot less noticeable than the difference between 60 Hz and 90 Hz. Not to say that 90 Hz is the most ideal setting or anything like that, but it is a nice improvement overall. But anyways, this was just a quick look at this game to get us prepared to look at the remaster of this. So I hope you found this video useful. If you did, be sure to subscribe, and be sure to subscribe to tune in to see what the remastered versions of these games are going to end up performing like, because we already took a look at Modern Warfare, we've taken a look at Modern Warfare 2, now we got to look at the remasters before we go for the reboot series.